Hi everyone, this is part 7 of my continuing story. I left off around September 96 when, not long after we'd left the witnesses, we came to the point of what do we do about all the books. We had so many books, I didn't know what to do with them. Jeff said give them away to somebody, and another friend said, no, that's just perpetuating the lie, and Olivia agreed with that, and I didn't know what to do, so I ended up storing them in the shed out in the backyard, and packed them up in boxes and put camphor balls in there and just stuck them out there for a while and thought, oh, well, I'll just have a think about it. Jeff and I had only been married about 7 months when we left the organisation, so we'd all been still going through this period of adjustment, learning to live together as a step family. So, as you can imagine, it was a pretty rough time of our lives. So at this point, I'll just read from my notes from the 12th of September 96. I'm trying to accept that Jeff's only seeing negatives because he's been off his medication, but I really hurt when he says we don't have much in common. Deja vu hits me. Plus he's working his butt off, and when he's home, he's just whacked out. Deja vu again. Have I repeated my earlier mistakes? We got married and I thought, wow, finally someone to share my love for Jehovah with. Now Jeff feels pressured by me regarding love for God. Bloody hell, that's what I've got written. Then the 13th of September, what a difference a day makes. Feeling better today. Jeff is picking up. He's on his tablets. Poor old Marie wasn't too good today. Feels like disassociating. Know the feeling. Like you're living a lie. In spite of the pain, I'm glad I'm out. I got some Christian books out of the library. Some parts are good, but in some places it's like a whole different language to me. Then one day on his way home from work, Jeff used to pass this church on the hill, and he came home one day and he said, oh, there's a banner out the front of the church saying some guy's visiting from South America. Would you like to go? I was a bit uncomfortable about it, but I thought, oh yeah, why not? So we went up to this church. This guy was a bit flamboyant, but anyway, it came to a point when they, did like what they call an altar call, I guess, asking anyone who wanted to come down the front. And to my absolute amazement, Jeff turned to me and sort of said, hey, want to go up there? And I said, no, I'm not ready for that. Don't let me stop you if you want to. So he went up to the front, and meantime, I went out to the ladies, and I was dry reaching quite a bit because it was just so foreign to what I was used to. I found it really hard. Then I think we went back the next night, and I don't think we went any more after that. The next thing I have in my notes is 22nd of September. Been in bed most of the day today. Went to the doctor yesterday, confirmed tonsillitis. Had a penicillin injection and given antibiotics to take. My week of looking after the office for Paul starts tomorrow. Don't want to let him down. Cold and flu tablets should keep me going. Jeff's working on his car today and worked on mine yesterday. Matt turns 12 this Thursday. Last Sunday, Marie and Paul were here, and the phone rang, and it was Vicky J, who wrote the book Sex in the Sect. She'd gotten my letter. I said I'd write to her. She told me she was living in a boat, on a boat. So she was coming down to Brisbane in October for the Warana celebrations and hoped we'd be able to get together. So that was fun. We did talk a little bit though, and she recommended to me Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on a Limb, but I wasn't ready for that at that time. The night before that, we'd had some friends over dinner. There's a couple with a couple of little girls, and another friend, Ruth, and her kids. I found it really difficult because this guy was just, a lot of swearing, a lot of sexual innuendo, and I was again right out of my comfort zone. And Ruth said to me later, she said, "Oh, it's just the programming that we've had, But yeah, I found that a bit difficult to deal with." Next part of the drama was I wrote a letter to my parents because I hadn't heard anything from them since I'd disassociated. So, dear Mum and Dad, as there's been no word from you at all since I gave you my dilemma to read, I can only assume you've decided to take the position of not speaking to me at all. As I said in the note I gave you, I understand if this is the way you want it. I was concerned about how my disassociating would affect you, but I knew you'd get plenty of support, and I've come to realise that since you were quite content to let Fred and Lionel charge me with slander a couple of years ago, which you all must have at least expected could, or maybe even hoped would, lead to my disfellowshipping, then you could no doubt cope with my disassociating. Therefore, I'll respect your conscience and won't complicate matters for you by popping in from time to time, as I said I would, but I would appreciate your contacting me if you need help in any way. Love, Joanna. Then I got the little note in my letterbox from Dad. Dear Joanna, received your note today and hastened to reply to read some matters. We didn't have any ideas about not speaking to you. We were, of course, concerned about your decision to disassociate and hope sometime you will return to the fold. Meantime, you are welcome to call in at any time. I did not have any ideas about isolating myself from you, neither did Mother, so we hope this clears up the problem you seem to have. Regards, Dad. And then a whole little PTO at the bottom of the note. Incidentally, I thought I would tell you of my concern about another matter. Often when I'm coming past your corner at night, the rooms in front are lit up and the curtains or drapes open so anyone can see in. With the present spate of invasions of homes, I would suggest you keep the windows covered up and also ensure doors are properly locked. Yeah. What unfolded next would have been seen by many as consequences for leaving Jehovah and the organisation. Satan has no doubt got his claws into us, but we went through a fairly rough time. My faith was still the same because I really believed that God had led us out of the organisation. But still, Jeff's faith was bound up with the organisation totally. He'd been a witness for about 13 years, but before that, he had a very different life from what I ever lived, and so being a witness in a lot of ways sort of straightened him out and helped him a lot. The situation had been when he was a small boy. He was only, I don't know, very young. His mum had some sort of breakdown, and there were 10 children in his family, and at the time they were all split up, and some went to live with relatives, but a few of them were sent to this orphanage. None of them can really remember how long it was. Being a child, it felt like a really long time, but we don't know for sure. But they weren't treated well, mistreated in the orphanage, and Jeff was actually sexually abused by one of the nuns that were there. So that obviously made his future tumultuous. Plus, we knew when we got married too that the fact that he didn't have his kids around would make it harder, that mine were there and his weren't. And so it did. It reached a stage where he was coming home pretty much irritated every night. And kids and I would sort of be walking on eggshells, and as soon as we'd hear his car come in the driveway, we would wonder whether we were going to encounter Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde. I'd done quite a bit of healing on my own with the kids, but there are some things that just don't arise until you're in a relationship. So things came up like that. Jeff had a few debts, so we ended up refinancing the house that I had and paid them off, and we also had invested $5,000 in a business deal with a company called EYC. So as I said, Jeff was a bit up and down at the time, and he'd been really good this particular day, and then something came up. Olivia told me about a problem she was having with somebody, so I said, oh, well, I'll talk to Jeff and see if he'll have a word with them for you. And when I approached him about it, he just lost his cool again and said, don't get me involved with anything to do with the kids. A little while after we left the organisation, we went to a barbecue. We went to a couple of them for like cult busters type of organisation. There was this woman in Brisbane, Jan Grunveld, who used to help people. I think she'd, apart from being a JW for a while, I think she'd also been Mormon or something. Anyway, this was her passion, and so she'd invite people to her home, and she had a big library of publications and things, and so we had this get together, and it was really good. Excuse me. Today it's great. You know, with the YouTube and the Facebook groups and everything, people that are leaving now have got so much available. It's just fantastic. But back then there weren't that many. Well, even if they were, you had no way of really contacting them except through Jan. So we met a handful of other witnesses. We went to a couple of these barbecues, but we sort of got to the point where we felt like some of them were being still a bit negative about stuff. You know, definitely you have to go through that when you first leave, but there comes a time when you think, well, we've just got to move on. So we stopped going then. I did feel a lot of compassion at the time. Not that I knew any of them, but I thought people who had either disassociated or been disfellowshipped for some reason, who still really thought it was not good enough and I'm going to die at Armageddon. This particular day, Jeff started washing some dishes in the kitchen, because that was sort of one of the issues we've had. I was a bit soft on my kids. I said to Matt, well, you know, can you just go and dry a few dishes? Anyway, he did a couple, then he turned around and he said, how many more do I have to dry, Mum? And Jeff sort of snapped at him and said, stop complaining about it. All you do is complain about things. And then Matt said, but I don't know how many a few is. And this is part of his ADD thing, that, you know, those literal things. Because I'd said to him a few times with different things, I'd say, oh, look, I'll only be a minute, Matt, I'll only be a minute. And I'd realise then he would stand there and he'd count to 60. And he'd say, it's been a minute, Mum. And as I said, the concept just wasn't there. Of November 96, Jeff and I agreed that we need some time apart, just to work on our issues. It was really difficult. So he arranged to move back into the flat with the guy that he'd shared with before we got married, and my idea was, that's it, we'll just work on our issues and hopefully get back together and things will be a lot better for it. I went and saw a counsellor with a friend after she'd talked to the counsellor, and then I spoke about my stuff. It really reinforced that it was the right thing, as hard as it was at the time, and whether Jeff saw it that way or what, that we really needed to have this time apart. Time apart, I started to read a few more books, and one of the ones I read was Women Who Love Too Much, and I sort of recognised quite a bit of myself in that, and realised that I had some codependency issues as well as everything else, and that's something that I really would need to work on. And plus Jeff was hanging around with this guy we'd had to dinner that time that unsettled me, this guy named Raymond, and I didn't feel comfortable around him, didn't like him at all, so I really didn't know at that stage. Even though it was only supposed to be temporary, I didn't know whether we would have a future together or not. We decided to put the house on the market to get out of debt, and I thought, I'll just get a unit with my kids. That would probably be easier to handle if I was going to be on my own again. I was determined I was going to do my emotional work, and I was going to go to a support group, which I did. I went to some Al-Anon meetings, I think, and I wanted to find my spiritual direction, no matter what Jeff was going to do. Jeff continued to be up and down in his emotions. And then it was Christmas, my first Christmas. Even though at the time I was still, don't know, not sure about this Christmas thing, but it was probably one of the worst days of my life, because Jeff popped in at one stage, but he was going to have Christmas lunch or dinner or whatever with Raymond and his family, so that was the end of anything happening there. As I said, was reading more books, and I read one called Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them. There was quite a few points in that, and being my codependent self, I bought a copy for Jeff and gave it to him with the covering letter. He did say after he'd moved out, though, I think it was one day when we were at work, and he said, "Oh, it's not the kids' fault. They're just kids. A lot of it's just my resentment." And I said to him then, I said, "Look, I had to do it for my kids' sake." And he made the comment at the time. He said, "Oh, I sacrificed my kids for Carla," which was his previous wife. Then before we knew it, it was New Year's Eve, which was, if it worse than Christmas, I think, if that was possible. I actually, though I'm not a drinker, I drank quite a bit of Bacardi and Coke that night, hoping it might ease the pain, but it didn't. I just was crying buckets of tears, and I actually read Jeff a release letter that I'd written to him, spewing out some of my feelings, and then I was sort of regretted it a bit. I thought maybe I've done the wrong thing. Then he got a call from his family to say that his mother wasn't well, that she had cancer, and it was probably going to be terminal. So he ended up going over to New Zealand and seeing his family. A couple of ex-witnesses that I'd met had said to me they thought I might feel comfortable with going to the Baptist church, and there was one not far away from home. So one Sunday I took myself up there, and I quite enjoyed it. And I went back the following week, and I pretty much kept going after that. So I was going to the Baptist church, and I would sit there and wish Jeff was there with me. And I've got in my notes, "Is this love or codependence, this hollow ache in me? Please, dear God, help me through this. Help me understand it all." I didn't feel that I'd ever be able to trust anyone with my heart again after that. It was hard. I've just got a little bit of information here in my notes about my dad. My father was always on about how women thought he was a bit of all right. Women he worked with. One told him he looked like Lee Marvin. There was Laurel, who came to visit us with her mother when we were on holidays at the beach once. And she worked with him, and I think we went to their place for dinner once. And there was an old friend he danced with at Lionel and Pam's wedding, though he would never dance with Mum, even though she loved it. And there was a sister he got close to who used to go witnessing with him a lot. And all this in front of Mum, of course. And even Marie actually told me once that he held her hand once when he prayed before they went out in field service. While Jeff was still away in New Zealand visiting his mum, I spoke to this Raymond guy, but he wasn't very encouraging, because he just sort of said that we're so different now, that Jeff's gone back to his former life and we've got nothing in common. Yeah, so I started going to these KYB groups through the church, Know Your Bible, and I organised to do this recovery from abuse course, which I think was free. It was actually set up through the Catholic Church, the terrible Catholic Church, and yeah, it was. I was really looking forward to doing that. It had been school holidays, and for some reason school holidays were always difficult for me, with, I guess, because the kids were around all the time. I'd get a bit stressed, but when Olivia was having some pretty bad emotional problems, I was round at my mum's one day, and I said, "Oh, I think I might take her to see a psychiatrist and see if that can help her." Then a little while later, when I was at home, Mum rang and she said, "I know it's none of my business, but I wouldn't take her to see a psychiatrist." And then I watched a Donahue program. Phil Donahue did talk shows. This one was on grandparents who abuse. I was just getting all the information I could at the time on abuse. Anyway, Mum and Dad called in just before the program went to air. And when I commented that I was about to watch this program, Mum just turned around and she said, "Oh, shut up." And I thought, Anyway, they left. I watched the show and I taped it. I took the phone off the hook, because I did sometimes when I wanted to watch something without interruption. And when I replaced the phone on the hook, Mum rang and she was really agitated and she said, "Oh, I've been trying to ring you for ages. I feel awful that I've lost you. I don't know why I said shut up." I just said, "Oh, not to worry, no problem." Scared woman, that's what I thought. Next part I need to read from my notes. Apologies again. This is 16th of February 97. Marie phoned while I was at church this morning. Olivia gave me the message and said Marie asked when I'd be home and told Olivia to be there to support me because she's coming to give me some bad news. Frightened the life out of me. I thought, Jeff's dead. I don't know, I just thought he is. I phoned Marie and I asked her to tell me and get it over with. She said no, he's not dead, but that he had a girlfriend named Michaela. Marie knew Raymond through Paul's business, and he'd told her that Jeff was living his old life, taking drugs, etc. And 10:45 p.m. I feel sick and can't sleep. I've had a chat to Matt about things. Told him Jeff had a girlfriend. He was upset. I've got this terrible premonition about Jeff that he's going to kill himself. I've been praying so hard for him and begging God for a miracle, but I've got this feeling that I've lost the battle. Oh, how I hope I'm wrong. Please, God, don't let me have to face that now. Please, no more. All I can think is that if God allows it, at least Jeff will be at peace. How will he stand with God? What thoughts will comfort me? To make matters worse, Vicky J rang and said her uncle, who I'd known all my life, was dying of cancer, and also that his son had committed suicide. She's probably going to come through Brisbane next Sunday. And then I just put, is God making her be here to comfort me because she also lost a husband in death? Why is this sense of doom overwhelming me? 11:39 p.m. Still can't sleep. He's dead. That's what I thought. I just really, really thought that at the time. Must be the next day. Yeah, the next day, 17th of February 97. Terrible day. Went up to Marie's to photocopy some info. Expected a police car to pull up this morning before I left. When that didn't happen, I thought maybe Marie was going to be used to break the news to me. Didn't happen though. Stuart from up the road called in and I told him about Jeff, that I was scared he'd suicided, and he prayed right there and then outside my front door with me. Felt disoriented all day, tired from no sleep last night, confused. Why does this happen to me? Why do you suffer so much just because you love someone? How can someone who acted so lovingly at one time be so cruel when you don't even know what you did wrong? This particular moment I'm wishing I was dead. Haven't felt like that for a while. In a lot of emotional pain, but I've been coping. Viewing the pain as part of the healing. On Saturday I was pretty chirpy, and then on Sunday the bomb dropped about Michaela. Not that it's a shock, I expected it. I'd even asked Jeff, but he lied. I wish I could just say I'll stuff him and forget it. Keep thinking of that song that goes, if it had to end like this, why did only your love die? Why indeed? Why is it the more you love and forgive, the worse it gets? Why can't there be someone who appreciates your love and understanding instead of tramping all over it? I accepted him, warts and all. Why doesn't that matter to him? Shit, I'm sick of this. Why do I always end up the baddie? How can I ever trust again? Next day, my notes say, last night Marie phoned to tell me Jeff had moved his bed into Michaela's today. Had a counsellor appointment. Really can feel God in my life at the moment. I love him so much. Went to KYB. Group therapy starts next Wednesday, the group I'd organised. Went to work. Told one of the guys at work that Jeff had moved in with his new girlfriend. Deja vu. Been this road before. The postman came, and the letter I had actually sent to Jeff had been returned and marked quite angrily. I could feel the vibes coming off the envelope. Returned sender without being opened. When am I going to stop being a bloody fool? 2 days ago I was beside myself thinking he may have suicided. Why do I still keep caring and worrying about him when he's being a right bastard? Still using me when he was probably already sleeping with Michaela. Why does this happen when you give love and try to help people? Yeah. Moan, moan, moan. Wish the house would sell. Yeah, then 19th of February. Wow, Jeff's Michaela phoned to talk to me. She'd found out we hadn't been separated as long as she thought. Felt sorry for her. Patricia was here when she rang, and we're both going to see her tomorrow. Jeff started going out with her about a week after he'd left here. He told her that we'd been separated since the July. He said he loves her and wants to spend the rest of his life with her. He's told her a pack of lies about me, of course. Tomorrow should be interesting. Next day, 20th, I said today would be interesting. That was an underestimation. Patricia and I visited Michaela. None of us could really believe the extent of lies and deception. Realised Jeff's a lot sicker even than I thought, and I knew he was bad. After talking to Michelle, Patricia and I had planned to call in and see Jeff and tell him we loved him. We were so rocked, though, by what we learned, we decided against it, to just leave him in God's hands. So we got back to my house. We were sitting at the kitchen table when the phone rang. I let the answering machine get it, and I heard Jeff's voice say, "Hello, Joanna. Jeff. Bye." Patricia said I should ring him back and just tell him how I feel and that I don't want to talk to him. I said I can't, my stomach's churning. I'll ring and leave another message later. Because earlier that day I had left a message on his answering machine. I said, "Hi Jeff, it's Joanna. Just phoning to say that in spite of everything, if you're finally ready to look at yourself, Mr. Sabotage, I'm still here as a friend. You have lied to and betrayed just about everyone here who thought they were your friends. You reap what you sow, Jeff. Oh, and just in case you're thinking of suicide to try and lay a guilt trip on me, forget it. It won't work. If you do that, it's entirely your own unnecessary choice and you're responsible. Bye." This is one of those things that I thought I needed to do for my healing. Anyway, Patricia then suggested that she ring, and just tell him I couldn't talk at the moment. So she did that. She chatted to him. She said, "You can do it, mate. Get yourself healed and you can have a good life. With God's help, you can do it." And he said, "You're talking to the wrong person about God." And she spoke to him a bit more, but he ended up saying, "I can't do it. I can't face the demons. I'm not strong enough. Bye." So we were a bit agitated by then. Patricia felt that he was going to suicide. I'll try and remember this bit instead of just keeping reading again. I dialed 000, as you do here. Got the police, and I asked them I gave them the address, asked them to go to his unit, because I thought that he was going to kill himself. Patricia headed off to the unit to see him. I stayed back because someone had to get the kids from school, so I picked up all the kids from school, and then when I got back there was a message from the police. Well, they rang back, and they said, "Oh, no, nobody of that name lives at that address." And I said, "Look, he's bluffing, go back." And I gave them his car registration number and described the car to them, and then the next thing I know, the phone rings, and it was Jeff's voice, and he was crying. He wanted his counsellor's phone number. And I started to give him the one I had, and he's like, "That's not the one." And I said, "Well, that's the only one I've got." And then I asked to speak to the policewoman, and I said, "Look, please, can you take him to the psychiatric section of the hospital?" And this policewoman I spoke to, she said, "Well, we have to do that anyway, that's procedure." So I thanked her, and I was so relieved that at least he'd now be watched and get the help. There was a message on the machine to say that Jeff had voluntarily admitted himself to the psychiatric section of the hospital. I went up the hospital, I saw Patricia there, and we waited outside for quite a while. She said that he was in talking to the doctor, and I went up and asked if I could talk to him, and so they checked with the doctor, and a little while later the door opened to the room, and there he was. Apparently by this time he told the doctor that he was okay now, and he wanted to go home, and I was ready to jump up and down. We'd gotten this far. I thought, oh gosh, don't just let him go now. So I talked for a little while to Jeff. I think I prayed with him. Then I waited outside for a little while again while he went in and he was talking to the doctor again. Then they called me back in. The doctor said, "There's no beds. We've got no beds here." So he gave me a letter to go to a place called Barrett, which I hadn't heard of. So we got the letter. Jeff and I got in the car and started to drive to this place the doctor had given us directions for, but yeah, that ended up being a nightmare because on the way there we ran out of petrol on the Logan Freeway. Poor Jeff had to get out the car and walk and get enough fuel. We got going again and we got to the end of the freeway and the doctor said it was really well marked, but we couldn't figure out which way to go, so we went up and down and we pulled up at one place and it's got this correctional centre sign outside it. Well, that can't be it. Anyway, after a lot of crazy moments, we finally found the place, and it turned out it was what I knew as Wilston Park, which was a mental asylum. So we went inside and I gave the lady at the desk the letter, and she said, "I'll just wait over in the TV room." So we sat in this little room and with a couple other people there, and a few people were walking around like zombies, and just was, it wasn't a nice place. And while we were sitting there waiting, I could see Jeff was getting even more agitated and starting to realise that this place just reminded him of the orphanage that he'd been sent to when he was a kid. So I went up to the lady at the desk and I said to her, "Look, can you tell me how long it's going to be? My husband's really agitated." And so she went to another room and talked to somebody. I could hear them and I heard this voice say, "Well, it's first in, first served." So I just went back to Jeff and I said, "Oh, look, we're getting out of here." And it was a bit like a movie from that stage, trying to get out of this place because the doors were all locked because it was a mental institution. And I just said to the lady, I said, "Oh, look, don't worry about it, I'll bring him back tomorrow." And she's ruffling through her papers. "Is he voluntary? Is he voluntary?" And I said, "Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I'll bring him back in the morning." So somehow we bluffed her into unlocking the door for us, and we got out of that place and headed back down the highway. And I thought, what am I going to do now? Couldn't come back to my place with everything that had happened. We thought about a mattress on the floor at Patricia's place. She lived nearby to me. That he didn't feel right about that either. So I thought, oh, I'll have to see if I can get him a motel room. So I did that. I went into this place and where we lived and paid for a room and told him to just relax there, watch some TV. And I went out and through Patricia, I got some Normicin tablets. Through Patricia, from her sister, got some Normicin tablets, took them back to Jeff and said, "Look, just try and look at this as a nice hospital bed or something and take these, try and get some sleep, and I'll be back in the morning." So, yeah, so in the morning, got up, I rang another hospital, the Princess Alexandra, and see if I brought him up there, would they have a bed for him? And they said, "Can't say really, it changes from time to time." They suggested I take him to this Woodridge Health place. I think I rang them. I don't know what I did. And I just, out of desperation then, I thought the best place for him is probably go back to New Zealand. I probably haven't mentioned earlier than this. He came back after he'd been over to see his mum. He came back and I was upset because he hadn't even told me that he was back or anything, but, as it turned out, I realised later this thing was all going on with Michaela. So that's why I was sort of out of the loop. Anyway, as I said, he'd been back for a while, and I thought, yep, that seemed to me maybe the best thing, send him back to New Zealand to be with his family. So I rang up and asked about flights and fares, and ended up there was one seat left going that day about 5 o'clock or something, and $722. So scraped the money together somehow. Borrowed some from Marie. Good old Marie to the rescue as usual. And we went into the city to pick up the tickets. I don't think there must have been any online booking at that stage, so it was a bit of a run around that day. We went in by train, picked up the tickets and came back, packed a few things for him to take, and raced back and got to the airport. And yeah, we got to the airport about 4:15 and started getting a bit upset then. We both did. And he said, he actually said to me, will you send me my wedding ring? And in tears he said, will you pray for me? And I said, well, I'm not going to stop now. And one of the last things he said to me was, I do love you in my own peculiar way. And I said, that's nice. It was real movie stuff, Ten Hanky Weeper. And that was it. Came home, talked to the kids, told them a bit about what had happened. I took a couple of tablets to knock me out because it had been a pretty trying day. But then I got a visitor and he was there talking with me till about 10 p.m. and I was half asleep because of the pills I'd taken. And day of drama.